Hey colorists, I'm back after being on vacation in California last week, and I'm ready to tackle another coloring page. So today, I'm going to be practicing something that I mentioned a few weeks ago that I wanted to get better at, and that is hair and skin. And this page is perfect since hair and skin make up about 80% of this page. And speaking of practice, this video is sponsored by Skillshare. Skillshare is an online learning community for creators with more than 28,000 classes in design, art, business, and much, much more. Premium membership gives you unlimited access to classes, communities, and workshops that are just right for you and your learning goals. They have classes on painting, creative writing, photo editing, even sewing. So if you want to improve your knowledge on any topic, Skillshare has a class for you. So join the more than 7 million students already learning on Skillshare today with a special offer just for Pencil Stash viewers. Be one of the first 500 people to use the link below in the description to get a 2-month free trial. Now beyond those 2 months, Skillshare is super affordable with an annual subscription being less than $10 per month. And with all the growth potential that these classes offer, this is a good investment in yourself and your personal development. Act now for this special offer and start learning with Skillshare today. We are once again pulling a page from Pop Manga Coloring Book by Camilla, which is full of quirky and interesting subjects. This one is a girl with some pretty great hair, and she's shedding a little tear, probably because she's got bits of octopus in her hair. I'd be crying too if I'm being honest. And besides just hair in general, I'd also like to practice different hair colors. So I've decided to make our sad little octopus girl a redhead, which is a color that I actually don't use for hair very often. I'm not sure why. I actually love red hair, and I think that all of the different tones that red hair can have will really be able to showcase well on this page since there's so much of it. So I'm starting with my lightest colors. Those will be my highlights. And I always do the highlight first, just to make sure that I'm holding those places very intentionally, since once you put down a darker color, it's very hard to go light again. So highlights first. And I really wish that I had a good system to describe how I decide where to put the highlights. Now for me, I just try to imagine a light source somewhere off the page, especially here since we don't really have a background. And then I imagine where that light would be hitting on her head or on her hair. And that's where I put down the highlight. And the nice thing too is that if that highlight doesn't look quite right, I can always use kind of a darker color to go over top of it to either kind of shrink that highlight down or eliminate it completely if it doesn't seem to make sense where I put it. I'm also intentionally using Crayola pencils for this step. Now these are Crayola's student grade pencils. They have a little bit less vibrant pigment than some of the artist grade pencil brands like Prismacolor, Faber-Castell, etc., which I actually really like using for my highlights. Since I tend to be rather heavy-handed with my pencils, I know that about myself, so using the Crayola pencils for this step for my highlights keeps me from going too dark or too heavy with my pigment right off the jump. So don't be a colored pencil snob. They all have their uses, and I really, really like Crayola pencils for my highlights. Once the highlights are down in the places that I think they make the most sense, I can start moving into my mid-tone colors, which is starting with this beautiful burnt ochre color. It has just the right warm tones to read as kind of our mid-level ginger color. And I love using this pencil. It's actually one of my favorites. I don't use it that often for landscapes just because I think it does have a very strong ginger tone that it tends to be a bit of a show stealer when I use it. So, but for here, I think it's actually going to be perfect. And I'm just using this to cover maybe 70% of the rest of each little hair section. So I'm leaving about 30% white. And I'm going to be adding a number of colors on top of this color. However, I plan on layering those colors over top of this one in certain areas, just to get a nice, rich depth of color. So some of this will be this color alone, and then other parts will actually be my base layer underneath others. So that's why I'm kind of taking up more of a portion of each of the hair sections with this color. My next layer will be Sienna Brown, which is kind of the big brother next darker tone to the pencil that we just used, that burnt ochre. And this color will be used to cover the remaining white areas, as well as layered over top of some of those burnt ochre areas too. So that's where we're going to kind of start to layer. And I don't know if it's just kind of personal preference, but when I do any dark areas on a page, I very rarely only have it be one color. In fact, it's usually a layered approach of at least 3 colors. I'm not sure if that's a legit thing, but it works for me. So later on, I'm actually going to be adding in more colors. So we're just kind of creating like a bit of like an overlapped sort of gradient approach. That's really kind of what I'm creating here by kind of leaving some of these colors by themselves and then layering these colors elsewhere. At this point, we have all of our hair colored in, but we are not done yet. This is just our base layer, our foundational layer, which we are now going to build upon with some detail. Next up, I'm going to be switching kind of back and forth between 2 colors, chestnut and dark umber. And this is where the hair, hopefully, if I play my cards right, will come to life. Now, in this book and on this page, we are lucky in that the artist has given us some guidelines to work with already. She's drawn in some of those hair strand lines that we can build off of and play with to create dimension and texture. And you can always add these in yourself, but it's helpful when the artist kind of gives us a head start. Now, I like the effect I'm getting when I go over each of those lines with my chestnut. Then go back and shade appropriately where there might be kind of some rounded areas or some folds, and the light might not be hitting those areas in quite the same way. Now here too is where I can go back in with some of my previously used colors to kind of fine tune some areas. I can shape my highlights a bit more, etc., until I'm 99% happy with the way that everything looks. Once I'm at that point, I'm going to blend. And today I'm pulling out a tool that I have not used actually in quite a while, the Prismacolor Colorless Blender. This is the same, stuff that the regular, Prismacolors are made with. It just doesn't have any color. So it's great for kind of pushing and pulling all those pigments together. And I think it will really amp up the ginger tones in this color combo, since it really adds a lot of vibrancy to the colors of your pencils. See the difference there? And even after you blend, you do have the ability to go back in and play. Now, for example, I'm kind of thinking that my highlights are just a touch too light. So I'm going to add in some of my tan Crayola color in just a very light layer over top. I'm not even putting kind of full coverage over this. I'm just going over it very, very lightly. And I like what that just small little addition did for it. Instead of just that sand color, it has more of a tan honey kind of tone, and that's just what I was hoping for. I'll use that same technique to finish off the rest of the hair. And at this step, I like to go one section of hair at a time where I'm adding in my shading and my detail colors, I'm blending and fine-tuning all at once, one section at a time. I find that it focuses my efforts and allows me to concentrate on finishing out one section at a time really well before moving on. Personally, when I do kind of the entire head of hair at once, like if I, do all the chestnut all over the hair, and then I go in and I do all the dark umber, and then I blend all at once, I find that I focus more on just finishing rather than finishing well. It takes a tremendous amount of time to do it one section at a time. In fact, just the hair on this page probably took me a good 3.5 hours to finish, but totally worth it. And I'm incredibly happy with the way that it came out. It's probably the best hair that I've ever colored. So super happy with that. Now, with the hair complete, we can move on to her skin, another area that I need some practice in to get better at. Now, what I think I struggle with is the fact that most coloring pages have the face or the skin area in one large swath of white, undefined area, which is not my favorite thing to color at all. It seems to show all your pencil strokes, and you're kind of left trying to define the cheekbones and kind of certain areas of the face, all with just your imagination and your skill to rely on. So this is definitely an area that I would like to use this coloring book to focus on. Now, the biggest helpful tip that I've found when coloring at least Caucasian skin is to use pink in combination with your other kind of beige type colors. Most skin is incredibly pink. We are warm-blooded creatures. And if you don't use pink as kind of a supplemental layer, your person will end up looking pale and kind of sickly. So these mauve tone, kind of rosy colors are your best friend when coloring skin. Another tip that I've found to be incredibly helpful is to treat coloring her face as though I were doing her makeup. So the same kind of rules and locations apply. So you'd add some bronzer to kind of contour the cheekbones. You'd add some rosy blush to the apples of her cheeks, and maybe a highlight down the bridge of her nose. So if you're familiar with those kinds of makeup tips, it will definitely help you in coloring faces. And if I were being honest with myself, this one came out just okay. I clearly still need a lot of practice to kind of improve upon this, and I know I've done better in the past. And again, I think it's just the fact that the faces in this particular book are drawn rather flat, so there isn't very much to kind of start from. And I think I just need to be okay with just okay. After all, that is what practice is for. Now, we've already spent quite a bit of time coloring this page. So when it came to the fish scale collar and the octopus tentacles in her hair, I was sort of left struggling for color palette ideas. Now, I know that green is very complementary to a redhead, so I began coloring her collar in a few different greens. But when it came time for the octopus tentacles, I wasn't entirely confident in the blue color choice that I had made. Now, I do like the way that it came out, but in hindsight, I kind of maybe wish I had chosen purple. I think the trifecta of like red, green, and purple would have been just a bit more effective. But not a huge deal. Like I said, I really do like the way that this came out. At the beginning, my biggest goal was just that the tentacles would stand out from her hair. I wanted to differentiate them. But again, in hindsight, it might have been kind of fun to play with blending them in a bit more, maybe in kind of a salmony color, just kind of make it appear that perhaps these tentacles are part of her, instead of like she got the whole tray of blue calamari dumped over her head. Oh well, either way, this page was incredibly fun to color, and I really do like the way that it came out. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. If you liked this video, please hit that thumbs up button and leave me a comment down below. What are some areas on coloring pages that you guys struggle with and could use some practice in yourselves? I'd love to know your thoughts. Subscribe if you're new, and I'll be back next week with another coloring tutorial. Be sure to hit the Skillshare link in the description to take advantage of that deal and to support this channel, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!